We had just taken over the jungle strip, and it was about 11 o'clock at night. It can be verified by the clock that donated to the Humboldt Legion when it stopped. But anyway, all of a sudden there was this god-awful noise. It was at night. But there was a Jap pilot that had probably figured he knew exactly where we were. He'd flown off of that. But this was a bomber guy. And he came across and he dropped, he thought where they had their tents, he figured we'd probably be in the same place. But we had our airplanes parked there, our tents were in a different place. So he dropped one of these canisters with an anti-personnel bomb, something that's supposed to explode about 50 feet above and then kill as many people as possible. This bomb malfunctioned and it dropped onto my airplane, B for Betty, and it just obliterated it. There was nothing left of it. And all the other airplanes were okay because we didn't have them that close together. But mine was completely obliterated. And it took me months. One part of that propeller, which I mounted the clock from, the clock stopped at the same time because it was broken, a little thing like this.
The clock inside the airplane.
The clock on this part of the propeller, and that's in the Humboldt Legion Museum. But anyway, that was a close call. If we'd had our tents there, but that was a hell of a noise.
And that what mark of Spitfire was that one?
Pardon?
What model of Spitfire was that one that got destroyed? Was that an 8, also a Mark 8?
That was the Mark 8 Spitfire.
The Mark 8.
That's the only one I flew at that time, was the Mark 8.
Can you talk about your feeling about that aircraft, like compared to the Japanese aircraft? Did you think you guys had a better aircraft or worse, or?
Well, there's one thing that we always warn: don't ever try and mix it up with the Zero, because it can outturn you and very maneuverable. If you had a height advantage, we were a lot faster, but he could turn on a dime. And one of the reasons they didn't protect the pilot, the Spitfire and the Hurricanes all had steel behind the seat, protect you against small arms fire. The Japs didn't have that. So an interesting thing, the Mark 8 came out after the Mark 9. Spitfire. And if you see, the Mark 9 Spitfire still has the tail wheel. The Mark 8 doesn't. But they needed something in a hurry because the Germans had already developed the second stage supercharger in their airplanes, the Messerschmitts, I guess. And they were starting to knock the Mark 5s out of the sky, and they had to do something in a hurry, so they modified the engine and kept the same airframe, Mark 5, and called it the Mark 9. But it had a bigger engine and a 4-bladed propeller. But at least it could compete with the Messerschmitts.
Would you estimate, like when you're doing most of your flying, for your ground attacks, how far off the ground are you with that aircraft, do you think? Like, how many feet off the ground are you doing most of your attacks then?
Well, you couldn't get, most places you couldn't get too close because of the height. Those trees are a couple of 100 feet tall, most of them. And that time when I force landed, by the time it was, I had to put it on wheels up, because I didn't dare, because you heard of guys getting hung up in these trees and they'd starved to death for weeks. And they got birds there that, what do they call these birds that...
Vultures? Like a vulture?
Vultures, right. There was, one time there were hurricanes with cannon, and they had been across the Irrawaddy knocking off some junk tanks, and one got hit, and I was right there, and I flew right alongside him, trying to get him to get up a little. His plane was still flying, but he was badly injured. He couldn't see. And I was talking to him and trying to get him out, to get him to bail out. And finally he just wouldn't talk anymore. And he bailed out, he was too low. And the vultures were there right away.
And did you lose any other, or did you see any other types of situations like that, or did you lose any squadron mates who died or got shot down? Do you remember anyone any stories about that?
Oh, we didn't lose too many people. We with accidents, sure. But most of I can't remember anybody getting, except people that came back after they, but you wouldn't see where they'd crashed or anything. We had one guy who was a Canadian, can't remember what squadron, he was one of our cistern squadrons. And he got the DFM, no,
DFC?
DSO,
DSO?
because he had survived his crash, and he got his way back to our lines, where he brought back a whole bunch of information which the Army found very useful. So they gave him this, I think it was this Distinguished Service Medal or something. But there was another guy who, for the longest time, he was a lawyer in just outside of Vancouver. Can't remember the name of the place. Herb Ivins was his name, and he went to university in Saskatchewan. And he was the light heavyweight boxing champion of Herb Ivins. And he was flying Thunderbolts. And when I did the testing, I flew the Thunderbolt. It was a beautiful airplane to fly. But anyway, he got shot down on New Year's Day of 1945. Crashed south of Mandalay. And he was badly injured. And the Japs he had broken bones, legs and arms and everything. They threw him into a cell, fed him nothing but rotten food. And I happened to be at the Dum Dum Airport the day after we took Rangoon. And he was one of the first guys flown out straight from Rangoon to England. And he had elephantitis. And I went on the airplane to say hello because we were on the same ship going over to Burma, or to Bombay, Herb Ivins. And his elephantitis, his leg was about like nothing but skin and bones. And he was a 190-pound guy, good shape.
But he survived.
But
Did you ever get sick yourself, or did you take malaria pills, or did you ever
No, I
get...
took Naproxen for malaria. The only thing I really had was, what do you call it? You get a rash. I had very light skin, and I would get a rash. What the heck would they call it?
Eczema?
Drive some guys completely crazy. In fact, on the way back from India, one guy jumped, he couldn't stand it anymore. He just jumped overboard in the Red Sea.
Must have been something worse than eczema.
But I did have one time, like we used to, Mineria, that was a base in central Ceylon. And 4 of us used to go to China Bay, which is on the east coast. The Japs had bombed that all the heck of that time. In fact, there was a Canadian got the Victoria Cross alerting about the Japanese. But anyway, China Bay, and we would do readiness there, 4 of us. And I got some kind of a bug. It was on this arm. And something would bite you, and some bug, and then it would ripen in there. And I remember landing in back at Mineria after a week of readiness, and when I moved my arm like this here, I hit it so hard and it hurt so much that I passed out for a minute, but I had already landed. But the motor was still running. And the guys had to sort of help me out of the plane, shut the motor off. God, that hurt. It was some kind of a, you ask about things like
insects.
that. I never had malaria, but I got this damn thing. It was a bug that plants itself and grows. And it hurt.
I just wanted to, so you had ended up flying over, obviously you said Imphal, and then you said, did you see stuff in Rangoon and the Irrawaddy? Like, I was just trying to identify what campaign areas. Do you remember what geographic areas you were flying over as you moved south?
Yeah, well, we were, once we got across the Chindwin in the army, and it wasn't too long, we were just on the outskirts of Rangoon, and somebody got the bright idea that the war in Europe was finished, and we were still struggling, and they said, gee, we got a lot of Canadians over there. So all of a sudden I wasn't there when I took Rangoon, but I remember fighting our way towards it, and we had no control over any of that. They took us all home. And
They just pulled you right out of the squadron. They left the squadron there, but they just pulled the Canadians
took all
out.
the Canadians, sent them home. I guess Mackenzie King said that time to bring them all home or something. But that was the end of the war. Once Rangoon, and they dropped these bombs in Japan. And my old squadron, Ginger Lacey, the old squadron, they were at that time the Flying Bark 12 Spitfires, and they were stationed someplace out there, Army of Occupation for a short while.
I was going to ask you, have you heard of the, there's a couple expressions in Kohima. Did you ever fly over, you probably flew over Kohima, which is near Imphal? Kohima? Do you remember Kohima?
Kohima was quite a big center, and it was hotly contested between the Japs and the British. In fact, if you read the account, one of the big battles was right by a tennis court, where they kept throwing stuff at each other. But we finally chased them out of the Imphal Valley. And it was mainly because we never lost superiority. There were 2 Spitfire squadrons in the Imphal Valley. I don't know what would have happened if the Japs would have caught us. It would have probably been the end of us.
So they're at Kohima, they have a memorial. It says, when you go home, they say, tell the people at home, for your tomorrow we gave our today. So for our tomorrow we gave our today. And the other thing I wanted to mention to you is that they call the India-Burma theater the Forgotten War often. So when you were there, did you feel that you were forgotten there? Do you have any comments about that?
Of course it is. This is at Bailey Bridge across the Chinwin River. The Chinwin is just south of the Imphal Valley when we started fighting our way down there. But it had well, we thought we were kind of forgotten because everything was shoved into Europe because they had the number one target was Germany. The Americans kind of took over into China, India, Burma. But we did have some entertainment. I remember Vera Lynn. You ever heard of Vera Lynn?
Yeah.
She came over. And some others.
Would that have been in India, Clem, or in Burma, do you think? Was that in India she came
Well,
to?
that was in Burma, I think.
Oh.
I can't remember for sure. But there was an interesting thing happened to me here one time when we were flying from. We had to bring 6 new airplanes from Ottawa to Newfoundland. So we landed at the Stephenville airport, four of us on Hurricanes, and we just got the motor shut off, and this beautiful girl will stick her head into the cockpit. And what it was this USA tour. The Americans were in the war already, and they were on their way to Europe to entertain the troops. And, I can't remember I mentioned it in here anyway, who it was. Oh, yeah. As we were on our squadron in Torbay, Newfoundland, we also had 2 Hurricanes, Harvards. And there were a bunch of Navy girls in the Navy headquarters in Torbay, or St. John's. And as a reward, they were allowed to come to the airport and get a ride. And this girl was from Raymore, Saskatchewan. And we were told to just take them up for half an hour or so and do nothing but straight and level, so they wouldn't get sick. And here it was 20 minutes. God, did she get sick. And the reason was, we were far enough away that nobody saw. She wanted me to do some aerobatics. So, okay, we did a loop. She enjoyed that. She says, well, do some more. So the next one was a roll on top, and that's when she got sick. And instead of half an hour, it was 20 minutes, and she had to clean it. Oh, yeah, Joan Blondell.
Oh,
She was
Joan
in
Blondell.
charge of that USO too.
I've heard of her name. Oh, okay. Is there other areas that you have talked about before with others, like say favorite or some really interesting things that you found interesting, or observations or other stories you haven't talked about so far? Like, friends or anything like that, or incidents you can remember?
Well, sometimes you jog your memory because I just remembered about that train, but there probably were others.
Do you ever remember supporting specifically the groups called the Chindits, which would be going?
They took off in the jungle, and they were more in the northeast, and we were always heading south. And they were trying to cut some Japanese, cut them off. Can't remember that guy's name. He was
Wingate. Wingate?
Wingate,
Yeah.
that's it. Colonel Wingate.
Yeah.
He was a bit of an oddball too, I guess.
When you were at your jungle airstrips, did you ever encounter Burmese civilians or Burmese soldiers, or did you ever see them?
We usually had Gurkhas protecting our, because so often when we were, you'd be sitting there by the tent and you wouldn't hear this guy, but you felt there was somebody, like here where there was a tent here, and you'd be sitting out there in the sun, on a deck chair or something, and you kind of sense it, and you look and here's a Gurkha standing right, and they all carry these long blades, and they were very quiet. You would never know they were there, but you just sort of sense that there's something. What the hell is it? It'd be a Gurkha. And I can remember going to England one year, my wife and I, the Buckingham Palace, and the Gurkhas were the people that were guarding over there. They're all little short guys, but they're very loyal to the British royalty, the Gurkhas.
Were they, so you had guard, in your jungle airstrips, you would have had guards? Did you ever get attacked or?
There.
Oh.
No, this, well, some, I suppose we did have them, but we were never really that conscious of them.
Did you ever feel like you were going to be attacked in your jungle airstrips? Did you ever, from the enemy?
No. We knew we had them on the run. These are pagodas that are adopted. That's Scotty Detler, I told you about him.
Oh. So,
Remember I mentioned that Scotty Detler is as white as a sheet. He got one of those anti-aircraft shells went off right underneath. He was from Peterborough, Ontario.
the other picture I'll refer you to, you said there was, on one of the tents, there was a Japanese skull with a helmet. Was that, you on one of your pictures, you had a Japanese skull on the top of the tent?
Yeah.
Was that common to have, for that, skulls and things to be, souvenirs to be around? Were you looking for souvenirs? Or?
Well, to fill you in on that story, the Japs had those great big kettles, cauldrons, I guess, which they cooked their rice in. The pioneers in Saskatchewan used it to make soap. They'd throw all their lard or tallow or something in it and make soap. You ever heard of that?
Yep.
Anyway, this great big kettle was left at this airport, and our doc, Dr. Jackson, he was an Englishman, and he took this Japanese soldier. They found him at the battle fairly close to it, and they threw him in this cauldron, and they boiled all his stuff off. He wanted a perfect skeleton to take back to England, and that skull, somebody, just as the Lord put the skull and the helmet back on the top of the tent, And there was a bullet hole through the helmet, right up there.
Did you ever look for souvenirs or bring any souvenirs back? Soldiers like souvenirs sometimes, and did you...
Well, I got some stuff that the Japanese they would drop in their paper stuff. I don't even know where it is.
Propaganda?
There might be some of it in here. To tell you the truth, I have a big beef with the Royal Air Force. You know, when we left the Imphal Valley, I had two big trunks. Had all my uniforms, greatcoat, on there for Canadian stuff, which you wouldn't use there. And I had bought a lot of silks, these big carved elephants out of ebony bookends and stuff. Set up two big trunks, steel trunks. And we were told when we were going down into Burma that we had to leave our trunks behind, and they were going to be held at a holding depot by Calcutta, which we could claim when we were leaving, to go home. So I had my two, they called them chits, or two things. I got there, not a sign of it. And I had to buy new uniforms before I left. I was in rags when I left Burma. I'm now supposed to go to England, dressed the way I am. I had to go buy a new uniform, Phelps, remember that guy, in Calcutta, and new hat, new everything. Never got reimbursed. I complained to it, and they called it an act of God. Never got a thing for it.
Then Clem, did you lose weight? Do you remember whether there was a lot of weight loss of being in Burma?
I think when I came back from Burma, I was like 156 pounds.
And when you went,
all muscle and bone.
Yeah. So what do you think you weighed when you went into India?
Probably 185.
Okay.
It wasn't from lack of food, it was just the heat.
So could you tell us about, you have an aircraft that ended up in a museum in the USA? Could you tell us about that?
So when we were in the Colombo airport converting from the Hurricane to the Spitfire, there was an airplane sitting there, YBJ. So I jumped into YBJ and had my first flight in the Spitfire. Now it was part of our, every squadron was an A flight and B flight. Now it was an A flight. So it was one of our A flight airplanes. As we kept going in the Hurricane, I flew B. So they gave me B again in the Spitfire. But all of a sudden, here's this airplane shows up in Addison, Texas, a suburb of Dallas, and it's YBG. So I checked my logbook. Anyway, I checked the log, I don't know where it is now, but the first flight was in YBG.
Oh, you said
it's
that's...
now,
Did you think it was Addison? Did you say Addison in... What museum did you say it was in?
it's the Addison,
Addison.
Kavanaugh Flight Museum in Addison,
Oh, okay. Is there anything you wanted to talk about in your logbook? I mean, it's just excellent. Is there any comments as you look through there that you want to make on camera? Because there's some really interesting things in there.
Isn't that something? Oh, here it is. J. YB means 17 squadron.
Okay.
And J, every airplane has its own letter. Like here's YBJ. And that's that same airplane that's sitting in the museum in Dallas, Texas. So there's a thing, well, I think you've seen it in Carol's office. It was sent to me from England about this. An Italian industrialist found this airplane, this derelict Spitfire behind the hangar in Jaipur, India. So he bought it from the Indian War assets. Because when we converted to the Mark 12 Spitfires, we gave all the Mark 8s to the Royal Indian Air Force. And they changed all of the thing, but the serial number stayed the same. So here's this Italian, has this thing dismembered, or taken apart, and as they took the skin off of the wing, they found a spanner in the wing. They were checking for corrosion. They had been there from the time they built the darn thing. Been rattling around in the wing. But anyway, when they wanted to do a profile on this airplane and they sent the serial number to Supermarine Spitfire and said, can you tell us something about this airplane? So MT719 was the serial number, and they checked it up and they said MT719 was the property of 17 Fighter Squadron. So then our records indicated that MT719 was designated YBJ. So it was the same airplane that my first flight.
So could you just, would you mind reading, there's a line that goes across, does this go across to here and then this says this, and is that Ginger Lacey's signature?
Well, that's the night they came over and bombed our strip.
Yeah.
And I had to get in there. And I had just spent hours beeswaxing the darn to make it fly faster.
So what was that beeswax process? Could you?
No, you just like waxing a car. It would make you go maybe 5 miles an hour faster.
So what did you write here? You said, can you read that to us? Raid.
Japs raid drone at night. Score direct hit on my aircraft. Writing it off. Then strafe past our quarters. Nobody hurt. Oh, she died like... Anyway, the airplane died, I guess.
She died like a martyr.
Yeah, can you read that line? She died like a...
She died like a martyr.
That's great.
Oh, here's the one about sight locomotives, pulling cars, make strafing runs, left of the engine steamy. Well, we did enough work, but there's one thing that I always regretted, that I could never tangle with like the German Air Force, the dogfights or something. We just never It's just the luck of the damn draw. We weren't in, they called us Strategic Air Force. We worked with the Army. And would have been nice to. You know that Johnny Johnson's, did you read that book by Johnny Johnson? He mentions in there my old squadron, 125 in Newfoundland became 441. And there were 12 Spit 9s met 12, I think they were Focke-Wulf 150s, or 190s. And they shot down 10. Johnny Johnson was the wing commander of that group. All 441, all 125. Probably Guy Mott was a good friend of mine. Bruce McKenzie, they probably were in on that. But they never told me about it. They never mentioned it. But Johnny Johnson, if he wouldn't have written that book, I would have never known. But 441 was in his wing.
Clem, can I take you back for a minute to when you receive orders probably that you're going to go back to Canada? So so did they bring you into India? They bring you back to India, and then you're going to go by ship back to. How do you travel back to England, or where do you go from India?
Well, we flew to the Dum Dum airport, and then we got on a train to Bombay, and in fact it was Bryce Chase. I couldn't remember the name of that ship, the Scythia from Bombay to England, and we went through the Panama Canal, the Suez Canal on the way back, and prickly heat, that's what I was thinking of. Prickly heat.
On your skin?
And as soon as, with my light skin, I just dynamite. But anyway, as soon as we got in the Mediterranean, oh boy, beautiful. And then we stopped in Gibraltar for some reason. And this is one thing that always annoyed me. There were these poor people in rowboats came to our ship trying to sell lace knickknacks, you know. And the guy on the ship, I don't know who the heck he was, but he kept shooting his revolver off at these people right beside him. I thought, what the hell do you want? Let the poor buggers, you know, you'd give them a few pennies, whatever it was you had.
Were you happy to go home, or did you feel, what did you feel when you're on those ships going back to England?
Well, I could have signed up for, because of my knowledge of German, I could have signed up for 2 years Army of Occupation, but I met a guy who says, if you think you're going to fly, forget it. Very little flying done. So, and he says the schnapps is terrible. So I went back to Canada. We came back on a Dutch ship to New Amsterdam.
Do you remember VJ Day then? Victory over Japan Day, where you were, or what you were doing, or what you thought? The end of the war with Japan, VJ Day.
Yeah.
So, do you remember what you did, or?
This is an amazing thing. I told you we just left Burma, and dropped the bombs, and we got on the ship. We were just clearing the harbor. You could still smell the Beetlejuice from this. You know, they all spit all over the place. I bred the beetle nut.
Like chewing tobacco. Mm-hmm.
And the war was over, VJ Day. That was our VJ. But VE Day, I was on a 5-day, what do you call, I had to get some teeth filled and sort of a rest in We stayed at Canada House in Calcutta on Chowringhee Street, and there was an invitation came from the Tullyguns racetrack. The Maharajas were having a gymkhana, trying their new race horses, all these rich Maharajas. So a couple of us went out to they took the streetcar, we went up to the Tullyguns racetrack, and we went right past the place where Mother Teresa was right there in that area. But anyway, we got there, and there were a beautiful place, swimming pool. Everything was free, except if you bet on the horses, you had to come up with the money. So they were here, they go this way. There they lined up here, but they walked the horses ahead of time. And there was this big black number 8. And I says that the horse will win by a mile. So they shot the gun off. They come running around this way. I'm standing, well, where's my number 8? I look back, here the number 8 is bucking, never got up. So as a result, I don't think I've spent more than $5 betting on horses since. I thought I knew horses growing up on the farm.
Have you ever been back to Bombay or to Burma?
We were thinking of going back one time, and got over to England, and just it was too far away.
Do you could you just describe? You mentioned something called Canada House in Calcutta. What could you just describe what that looked like, or what it was?
It was a place where Canadians could gather, and there was a guy from Wilkie, Saskatchewan. I remember him, whose name was Blessing. A real nice guy, and he always made sure you were all looked after. He was in charge of the Canada House. He was an older guy.
Like a hotel? Like you get meals and food there?
It was called Canada House. It's probably like probably now it would be a bed and breakfast or something. But it was fairly big, rather than stay at a grand hotel or something. Because it had the Canadian reading material, and they served you more or less Canadian food. We enjoyed it there. Anyway, the jockeys were all little guys there. So this one fellow says, you see that jockey there? He and his bride are the parents of, what the heck was her name? She was quite dark. She's a movie star. Can't remember her name, but anyway, they were the parents of this pretty dark movie stars, quite famous.
From the movie star from the United States, or from?
She was from way back then.
Okay.
She was, and the mother was real black. The jockey was a Scotsman. But this movie star was sort of half and half. Can't remember her name now. I thought it might be her.
Is there any other thoughts or ideas you want to express about your experiences of like where that sits in your life now, or how you look back at that in relation to your wartime in Burma and India? Or
well, I enjoyed flying, and by the time I got back, it was October, because from way over there, and it was too late to go to university, so I went to a business college, Success Business College in Saskatoon, and I went into business. But later on, after 10 years, I went back into flying. I had my own flying business, Parkland Airways. and crop spraying, student training. At one time, I think about half of the guys flying the airlines are people that I had trained. In fact, do you ever hear of Fred Langan? He was a pilot in charge of I imagine it was at that time probably 707 or something. But anyway, George Service was his co-pilot. So they were flying from Calgary to Winnipeg. And Fred Langan says to him, my brother-in-law runs a flying school up here in, just north of here in Melfort, Saskatchewan. Melfort? Wouldn't be Clem Gerwing, man. Yeah. So here these guys meet. One guy, and I got him as senior commercial plus instructor's ready. He's now, and shortly after, he's first pilot on the 747s. He just retired, George Service.
Did you keep in touch with any of your wartime buddies then?
Well, yeah. In fact, Bruce McKenzie, when he saw the coverage of the Duchess, Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, he sent me an email. I hadn't heard. He was a dentist in that place just outside of same place for Herb Ivins. I can't think of New Westminster.
New Westminster. Oh.
New Westminster. And he was a dentist there for many years. He's now retired on an acre just outside of Victoria. He sent me an email. And some of my students from Melfort sent me emails.
And Bryce.
So did you belong to organizations? Did you stay belonging to, after you got out of the military? What year would you have got out of the military? October?
Well, I joined the Legion.
Yeah.
I belonged to a couple of legions. And she got me to go to the air crew in Calgary at the armory. I hadn't been there. I'd often been told that, like Bill Brennan and guys like that. It was a funny thing. Bill Fowler and Bill Brennan are brother-in-laws. And Bill Fowler and I trained together at Uplands in Ottawa. And when they took the group picture in front of a Harvard, he's standing right behind me. You've seen that picture, eh? And just before they're going to snap, he pulls my wedge cap. It's supposed to be, what, this high? Here, he pulls it way back. So we bought a house in Lake Bonavista. We moved in, and my wife took our youngest son to football practice. And I'm making myself some dinner. And there's a doorbell rings at the back on Lake Louise Way. And I go to the door, and there's this guy standing there. He says, he looks at me, he says, is your name Clem Gerwing? I said, yeah, because what the hell is this all about? And he brought this picture out, and he pointed. He says, well, that's you. And I said, well, I looked at it, I said, well, that's me, all right, but who the hell are you? He pointed, he's standing right behind Bill Fowler. He's the son of a guy that pulled my hat back. We ended up neighbors in Lake Louise and Lake Bonavista.
That's
Isn't that something?
He was married to Peggy Fowler.
Peggy Fowler, right.
There's a tribute to him in the mural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peggy, we still keep in touch.
They're doing well?
Yeah, you've met him.
Yeah.
You met Bill died. In fact, shortly after Bill Fowler and I flew to Winnipeg, when Ginger Lacey was the guest of honor there, then he died. and she's remarried. But going back to Ginger Lacey, when he had to go all kinds of functions, you know. So he had his wife along, Sheila. We'd met her before. But anyway, he asked Bill Fowler and me, because we were in they had the fighters, the bombers, Coastal Command, all had their own. But anyway, Ginger Lacey was and he asked us if we would sort of look after Sheila while he had to do something else, and she wasn't to be there. It was some civic thing. So we were standing around, and she says, I must tell you chaps, a cute little story. So she says, after the war, the German pilots and the RAF guys would have reunions. She told me they'd get together, and she says, General Gallant, who was in charge of all the fighter squadrons in Germany, he says, he came up to my Ginger and said to him, I guess you and I tangled a few times during the war. So my Ginger looked him right in the eye and said, not bloody likely. He says, if we would have, you wouldn't be here. He says, then they put their arms around each other, went to the bar, and had another gin and tonic. I thought it was pretty, but he was a cocky guy, Ginger Lacey. He shot down 27, but he himself was shot down 7 times. He shot down the bomber that shot down our bomb Buckingham Palace.
Well, I think you've got many stories. I think we want to pull this maybe to an end, but we have to thank you, and I think you're very modest. I think your contribution is really major because there's so few Canadian stories that we have out of the Burma-India area. Most of them, as you know, tend to cover Europe very well, but this is an area that there is not much information on. So by having this in the archives, we've got just a splendid place, I guess a splendid resource for researchers and Canadians and genealogists and everybody to kind of use this information. So we really want to thank you. You can see, you might not see this, but this is very valuable for us to have all this information.
Well, I hope it'll be of some benefit.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Thank you very much.
There's one thing I always regretted, the bit of propeller. In fact, Michelle took a signed picture framed of Ginger Lacey. He signed it to the museum in Humboldt, Saskatchewan. And the piece of the propeller that I took, I picked, didn't have any shrapnel in it. Kind of stupid. The propeller was pitted with shrapnel from the anti-personnel bombs.
Do you know, I'm just going to stop. Something I missed I should ask you about. I think. So how did you get into this world-famous Royal Boot Company business? Could you just kind of maybe just something, a couple comments on that? Because we didn't actually touch on that. I just realized that.
Well, I came to Calgary in 1963. That's quite a while ago now. And I bought into the John Deere agency. And there were 4 principals. And they were all French. They were career boys from St. Brew. And in fact, I had the most money in the thing. But we'd have a meeting, and Adrian was always the president, which I had no quarrel with. But all of a sudden, the whole damn meeting was in French. So I said, you better get another French guy to buy my shares. So then I sold my shares in the heck was the name of the John Deere agency? Anyway, so now I'm looking for something else, and there was a wholesale footwear for sale, G.F. Plutchett, or 10th Avenue. and it's now Kipling Square.
Yes.
That there used to be Geoplatzi. So I bought that, and I found out that we're sending a lot of money to the States for boots. I says, well, how come they're not made in Canada? Well, there was, Boulay was making them in Quebec, but nothing out west. So I went to a lot of factories, and especially, and then I started bringing in boots from Mexico. And it started to run into a lot of money. I said, well, somebody should be making these boots in Canada. What the hell are we sending all the money out of the country for? That's how it took me 2 years to develop the first last to fit my foot perfect. And then you hire a shoe grader from the one size that you know is perfect. He can grade anything. And he did a beautiful job. How do you like yours?
I love my boots.
She wouldn't take any money for this, and I finally almost had to hog tie her and get her to sit down and give her a pair of ostrich, the same as the Duchess got. So now my son was supposed to be there. He's already retired, but my grandson is learning the business. Ben?
Well, thank you so much again for all this information. It's just amazing.
Well, probably lots of stuff that I couldn't remember.
Thank you, Clem.
That book has been around.